If you're still using ChatGPT as your primary AI tool, I have bad news for you. It's like driving a sports car in first gear, and I will show you how to shift. The model isn't the problem, the interface is. Everyone argues about which model is the best, GPT-5, Opus 4.7, Gemini, but the difference in the output isn't about the model. It's about what you wrap around it. And I'm going to show you a setup that changes everything. What you need is a customizable setup that you can extend with your own tools and skills, and where you can have a higher degree of control over context, so you can decide how the model thinks and which content it has access to. Then you will get less generic results, avoid hallucinations, and more importantly, allow your model to perform truly agentic actions on your behalf, so you don't have to manually copy and paste everything. In fact, I've been using this setup for many of my own projects and got really amazing results. I could generate much more interesting insights for my research, create content that's relevant much faster, and also attract new audiences to the work that I'm doing. All thanks to the setup that I'm going to share with you today. There are 4 pillars that make this setup work: controlled context, MCP servers, skills, and reasoning graphs. Let me explain how each of them works briefly. Controlled context defines the scope of your projects and makes your results much less generic. MCP servers allow you to connect your LLM to external tools and applications that have access to real-world data, so you avoid hallucinations, and also allow your model to perform actions on your behalf. Custom skills automate your workflows and allow your models to have access to custom knowledge when it thinks it is necessary to use it. Reasoning graphs provide custom reasoning logic to your model, so you can use them to steer your model's thinking into the direction you want. I'll show you how you can set up a system with all of those pillars activated. My favorite setup is using Claude Code because I think it's the best tool at the moment for combining all of these different elements together. You can do that as well in ChatGPT, but it doesn't allow you such a high degree of customization, and also in ChatGPT you have to manually invoke all the different tools and skills that you have to use this custom GPT, so it's a little bit clunky. In Claude Code, instead, you can actually do all of this automatically, so it's going to decide which skill or MCP server to use for you, which is really great. You can also say that you want to use a particular tool and it will do that as well. But also another advantage of Claude Code is that it was developed for software development, for coding, and as we know, coding is one of the most lucrative and successful use cases for AI so far, where the money is, so they put a lot of investments there, and they also get direct feedback through reinforcement learning, improving the models and the harness around it, because with coding it either works or it doesn't, so you either get results or not. It's much harder to get this kind of insights from your interactions with ChatGPT, where you're just asking stuff and you never know whether the response is true or not. Not so many people click on good response button. However, here in Claude Code, everything is automatic, so they can really develop much better workflows there. And there's a much higher degree of control. So I'm going to show you how to use Claude Code for it, but I will also demonstrate how you can use ChatGPT on Claude Web as well. So let me first demonstrate why each of those elements are important: the controlled context, MCP servers, skills, and reasoning graphs. I will use my own examples for the demonstration, so I show you how and why they work, and then I'm going to show you how you can set all of this up yourself in your own system. Let's begin with the first pillar, controlled context. So when you start a new interaction with ChatGPT, you start from a blank page. ChatGPT doesn't know anything about you except for the memory that it has of the previous interactions. And you have to define what you will be talking about in the prompt itself, so it takes a lot of time. You can solve this problem by adding a new project. So you create a new project here and then you give it a name. And then once you create it, you can actually describe what this project is about, identify what sources it's going to be using. So there you define the context a little bit, but imagine you have to do all this manually. You have to upload stuff. If you have projects that cross-reference each other, it will be a complete mess very quickly. But it's a good way to begin. So if you're not using projects yet in ChatGPT, you should. Another really interesting way to add context to your ChatGPT conversations is through the InfraNodus MCP server. So when you have a chat in ChatGPT, you can click here and then connect it to the MCP server. I will explain later in the video how you can connect them. But basically here I have access to my whole InfraNodus account. InfraNodus is the tool that I developed where you can create knowledge graphs from any text, or external data. And so here I have a graph on body as a network, right? So here is a representation of this context, and then it means I can access it. So it becomes like a portable storage of knowledge that I can reuse in any conversation I have. So here I have it saved in the InfraNodus graph, and when I go to ChatGPT, I have a conversation here on adaptability and resilience, and then I can say, okay, I choose this MCP server here, this account from InfraNodus, and I will say, okay, find the graph that is called network body. Here I'm gonna copy the name of the graph, network body, and use it to get insights about this talk. Okay, so I type it in, and then look what ChatGPT does. It will call a special tool that will request the network body graph, and then it says, okay, I found this graph. And then it's going to call another tool where it's going to retrieve the graph structure and the content from the graph. And then it will see how to apply this data to the conversation that I had so far. So it's very interesting because you can also connect different contexts to another context and then combine them together to get some really interesting interdisciplinary results in this way. Then you also have custom GPTs. If you have a paid version of ChatGPT, you can create your own custom GPT where you basically give some instructions to ChatGPT how it should be thinking and provide it additional context here through knowledge. But again, it's very manual and you have to update it all the time. And so it's not very convenient. This is why I always recommend that people use Claude desktop version or Claude Code. I'm going to show you the desktop version and then I will show you Claude Code. And in the desktop version of Claude, you actually have something really interesting, because what's really great in Claude Desktop and in Claude Code specifically is that you can choose the folder where you will be working. So for example, if I would like to select a folder with my research papers, I can do that. I can go here in this menu, open folder, and then go to software where I have my different folders. I have the second AI brain on fractal variability. That's a research I'm doing. If you would like to check the app I'm working on, please look at the description in the video below. It's a HRV tracking app and also adaptive movement variability app. So you can see what I'm actually doing with this. But basically I select the folder here, right? So now the folder is selected in Claude Code, and Claude Code has access to all the files I have in this folder. So if you look at this folder, in fact, there's quite a few documents here. I have the original raw documents that are saved in the papers folder here. I converted them from PDFs. So I have another video that I will link to above that explains the LLM Wiki setup that allows you to do that. And we also have a skill available that you can use in Claude to do that. But basically, you have all your documents and notes in one folder. And then you have an internal wiki of documents, concepts, relations, and so on. So your Claude Code has access to all this data. And as soon as you start asking it anything, even a generic query like this, what is this about? It's going to then ask you if it can trust the workspace that you opened. In this case, it's the fractal variability workspace. And here it's telling you, okay, so this is the wiki on fractal variability. This is the structure of the documents. And here it's telling me what this project is about. It's a living research project synthesizing how fractal patterns appear across 3 physiological systems: heart rate variability, breathing, and movement. So it's great. It has already the context and I can interact with it. And I don't have to manually shift the documents between my folders and ChatGPT in this case. I can just have that one folder. I can also have version control through Git installed into it. So each time something changes, it saves the version and I can always revert back. If you don't know what Git is, you should check it out. It's a very good system to keep track of the changes you make, and people use it in software engineering a lot. But basically you can also use it on your own documents. And so here you see I already have the context. Everything is working, and then I can give it instructions and extract some interesting insights from my knowledge. And I control exactly what it has access to and what is the structure of this knowledge. I can also add additional context into my conversations in Claude. So for instance, here inside InfraNodus, I have a graph, which is a text on the body as a network. And I would like to add it into this conversation on fractal variability. So I can connect this external knowledge here and see how it applies in this particular context. For this, I need to create the graph inside InfraNodus, which I did with the content. And then I can take this content and go to Claude and say, okay, now use the network body graph to generate some interesting insights related to the content of this repo. And look what happens here. Claude is going to use the built-in MCP tool. I'm going to talk about MCP tools later. That will extract this graph from InfraNodus, extract all the insights about the ideas and relations between them inside, the gaps, and then open this graph inside Claude Code, inside my interaction with this repository here, and use these insights in order to generate some interesting ideas that relate to fractal variability. So the connection between the body as a network and fractal variability. And here you will see that it talks about the different clusters of ideas that were detected in the graph first. And then it says, okay, so here are some interesting research questions that I could apply from your graph to this repository of knowledge in order to develop these ideas in an interesting way. So you can also connect those ideas externally and different contexts externally from InfraNodus back into your Claude interactions. Another example I want to show you is even better. I'm making a new page on the InfraNodus website on the side of the tool I'm working on for visual text analysis and insight generation. And for example, I wanted to make a page on MCP versus RAG versus AI agents here. So I gave it access to the folder of content of all the marketing pages for InfraNodus, all the landing pages, all the documentation and so on. And then I told it, okay, I want to create this page for the docs section. It already knows the structure, the context is there. And then it generated through a few iterations. I'm going to show later what other tools and MCP servers it used. But basically, in the end, it produced a really nice result where I had a page here on MCP versus RAG versus AI agents. It gave me a nice structure, and then of course I went in and manually edited everything because I don't like AI generated content, but it's quite good for generating the first structure and then augmenting it with your own human input and ideas. So you see, it's quite fast. Like I had this whole process here done for me, and then I went in and just did the most creative work myself, and that works really well because I had the context specified here by identifying the repo where all the files are. So this is really good workflow, and I recommend you to use it. And as you can see, you can use it both for research, for writing, and also for generating pages for your websites as well. Then the second pillar that I want to demonstrate to you are the MCP servers. So MCP servers is something that allows your LLM to connect to external tools and applications and get some real life data from them. So for instance, here, if I ask ChatGPT, tell me how many searches people do a month on MCP servers. So if I ask this question to the tool, it's going to try to, get some result, but it doesn't know anything because you see, it just has its training data. It doesn't have access to real-time data on how many searches per month happen for this particular search query. This is where you need to use something like MCP tools, and you can connect it to your ChatGPT here. If you go to more, and then you see I have the InfraNodus MCP server connected. If you want to connect it, you have to go to the settings page in your ChatGPT and then go to the apps, and then you have to switch on in advanced settings that you're in development mode, and then you add the MCP server. So you see it's already quite long. I have another video where I explain how to do that, but basically you can just Google how to activate MCP servers in ChatGPT. And then once you do that, then once you have the MCP server available here, please check again with InfraNodus, right? And even if I ask that same question, ChatGPT would already have access to this tool. You see it identifies that there is a tool. If I click on it, I think you can see that it's called Analyze Related Search Queries in InfraNodus. And so it already knows how to query this tool, and then it's going to get results with real-time search data for the search queries, and it will show me what people actually search for. So if I create content, for instance, it's very interesting for me because I understand that, okay, MCP server is one keyword, but for example, model context protocol is another. So I should be probably using that. And then it gives me a high-level overview of the main topics. For example, there are some directory services. So there's a lot of directories on MCP servers, and maybe I should also make a page about the various directories there is. But you see, I get access to real information here. And so that allows me to connect my tools, LLMs, to the real world data. And this is very useful. And you can also use it for many other applications, not only to get search intent data, but also search results. You can also analyze documents with the InfraNodus topic analysis tool, exactly what we have here. You know, when you visualize the graph in the tool, and then it shows you what are the main topics inside any document. So you can also use the MCP servers for that and so on. But as you can see in ChatGPT, it's pretty complicated to connect it because you have to activate it, then you have to add it here again. So it's really clunky. But if you use Claude Code, it's actually pretty easy because you set it up once in your settings here, and it's much easier to do than in ChatGPT because basically you just go to developer and then you edit config and then you add the MCP server there. And if you're in the web version, you just go to the settings and then you go to connectors and then you add custom connector here, and then you can just add the link to the MCP server. So it's really one click, you authorize, and then you have it available both in the web version of Claude and also in your Claude desktop. So if I go to another page here where I'm creating a new page on search engine optimization clusters for the InfraNodus website, I asked it a question, but Claude here automatically identified that it has access to these MCP tools here. You see, it used its own tool search, and then it identified it has analyze related search queries tool, but also analyze Google search results, and then analyze and compare search queries to search results to find what people search for but don't find. So it combined all these different tools together automatically in order to give me a much better insight. And this is why Claude is so much better than ChatGPT in this case, because you don't have to manually choose the tools here, but you can actually rely on Claude to choose the tools by itself based on the needs that you have. And then it integrates the responses from the tools into its reasoning process, and then you get really good insights in just a few clicks. So this is really good, and I really like using that as well. And by the way, what's good about using the InfraNodus tool is that you can also do all of that inside InfraNodus itself. So for example, if you would like to get a general understanding about the context, you can visualize a text like I did here as a knowledge graph, and then it shows you the main topics inside, the main concepts, how they relate to one another. And then you have the AI box inside InfraNodus itself, where you can ask, what are the main ideas in this discourse. But the advantage is that you're not just using chat interface, but you have this direct graph visual feedback to the information, and also the built-in AI has access to this structural knowledge underneath, so that you are much more aware of what's happening under the hood, and you make sure that the model doesn't hallucinate this way. So this is why using that inside Claude or ChatGPT is so much more useful, because you're getting better quality insights this way. Now let's talk about the third pillar, and these are the skills. So the skills is something that is more used in Claude than it is used in ChatGPT. And here we have a really good example of that. If you go to settings and you go to capabilities and then you scroll down, you have skills. And now they moved it to a new menu, customize. So you can go also to customize menu on the left. And basically the skills are the custom prompts that you give to your LLM to make it have access to certain knowledge or even to certain ways of thinking. So as you can see in my example, I have a lot of them. I even have a Vipassana meditation LLM that makes my LLM meditate and perceive the world through the framework of Vipassana meditation. And then I have another one on UX design framework when I need to design something, for example. I have another one which is like a stock analyst. So you can have multiple skills. And what's really good in Claude is that once you add all of those skills into your desktop version, for example, you can also use them in Claude Desktop and Claude Code as well. So then it means that you can really easily activate those skills. And also you can have Claude activating them automatically depending on the workflow. So it becomes a truly non-linear workflow where your AI has access to all these different ways of thinking and where it can use them however it sees fit. And in fact, some of the skills, we also made like a repository of our own skills that also make use of InfraNodus MCP servers. So they work really well in combination with the graphs. Some of the skills, for instance, the search engine optimization skill that we have, it uses this InfraNodus logic where you go inside InfraNodus and then you need to analyze search results for a certain query, like for instance, MCP servers, like I did here. And now it's going to build the graph for this search query here. right? But through the skill, I can tell the model that it should be using this MCP server when it needs to get these results from it. And then it will somehow have access to this graph, but in the backend. So you don't have to do all this manually. You can if you want to, but Claude has access to how to use InfraNodus under the hood through that skill, and how it can combine all the different insights that you can get in InfraNodus. All the topical clusters for a particular research query, also how you can analyze and find content gaps inside and so on. So you can identify all those skills. You can tell Claude how to use a certain tool or an MCP server, and then apply this in your own workflows. And it works really great, so I recommend you to use it. You can add them in the customize menu, skills, and then they will be available in your Claude workflows. And what's great is if you go back to chat mode in Claude, actually, like if you start a new chat, for instance, you can also ask it to develop a new skill for you. So you can, for example, tell it, build me a new skill on, let's say, text analysis, right? And if you click enter, then Claude will use its own skill building skill to create a skill for you. So what works really great is if you find at any moment of your interaction with Claude that you stumbled upon a workflow that you would like to replicate in the future, just tell it to make a skill from it, because it's going to give you really amazing results, and then you can reuse this skill in any other project you have. And also you can apply that skill in any other LLM as well, because then it's going to be available through Claude ecosystem. So then if you prefer, for example, to use it in something like Cursor IDE, which is like an advanced text editor for coding, you can actually do it there as well. You can open Claude in here, or you can open the new chat with Cursor AI, and then you can start interacting with this skill, but through your other models that you have. So it's a really good way to also use the skills in different models and in different contexts as well, using different tools. So I really recommend you to use skills. And then the last pillar that I wanted to talk about are the reasoning ontologies. So we have a whole page on InfraNodus about them. And basically, these are the ways to tell your models not only what to think, because you can do that through skills and custom prompts, but also how to think. So the reasoning ontologies define reasoning rules that your models can use when they need to think about something. And then you can use them in any other workflow. So for example, here, if you go to the reasoning ontologies page, you can see that there is a few examples of those different ontologies that we have. For instance, Ray Dalio's economic principles. So you can open the graph with the economical principles of Ray Dalio, the main concepts and the connections between them, and then you can feed this into your favorite Claude interaction, either through the chat interface or through Claude Code, and then use it in order to apply this thinking process to any context you have. So for example, if here I have to go, let's say, into Claude Code, I can say, okay, now use InfraNodus expert graph from getting to yes in order to improve your reasoning and make this article more coherent. And look what's going to happen here. This is an article on CO clusters, right? I already have it saved here, I think, yes. So the changes that I'm going to add are not going to overwrite what I already have. And you see, by using the tool search, it identifies that there is a special InfraNodus tool that's called Analyze Existing Graph by Name. Okay, then it's going to evoke this graph, find the name of the graph, then it will use generate responses from the graph, so it understands which graph to use, right? And then it makes a prompt. So it says, okay, use getting to yes graph. This is the prompt that you have, and then you have to retrieve it from the knowledge base and get the results. So it's asking me if it can use this tool. I say yes, you can do that. And let me demonstrate something interesting to you, because as soon as the LLM encounters a mistake, like in this case, you see it couldn't retrieve the graph. And this happened because this graph is not available in my own account. It's available in the expert account. And I told it to actually use expert graph from getting to yes. So now it understands it made a mistake and it corrects the mistake by itself. This is why Claude Code is so good when you use it, because it will basically be able to fix itself if it encounters a problem. So in this case, you see, it understood that, okay, it needs to provide a username expert, then the same prompt, And then it's going to generate a result from this graph and then augment the existing content that we are working on with this expert knowledge from the famous negotiation framework getting to yes. So I'm writing about CO clusters, but how can I phrase this content in a way that would sound persuasive to people, right? So it's pretty interesting. You see, it found all this content, it found all the information from InfraNodus. So it basically consulted with this very graph that we see there. We saw Ray Dalio, but the one that we're using is actually getting to yes negotiation framework, right? It applied the reasoning from there, and then you see it's adding some changes to the page so that it caters to the demands that people have about this information. You see, it's saying it's opening reframe, so it replaces the attack on templates opening with an interest-based frame. So it's catering to the interests of the audience, right? It's applying this reasoning of getting to yes to writing this content. And then it says, okay, let's also add the underlying interest layer, security against volatility, and then replace adversarial templates versus graph framing with a separate the people from the problem frame. Templates were right from an earlier retrieval regime, but now graphs, they provide better results. So you see, it's trying to soften the message, but to still keep the tension inside that is important for engagement. So you see, it's really interesting because you can combine different workflows like this and apply reasoning logics from one context to another. And I find that's very interesting. And this is why also Claude Code works so well, especially with MCP tools and especially if you connect external graphs to it. If you're interested to learn how this workflow works, I have another video that I will link to above, which explains how these reasoning ontologies work and how you can set them up. All right, so I hope you find this demonstration interesting. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, feedback. Also, if you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to this channel so that this video can get recommended to other people interested in the same stuff. And I will be happy to hear from you and see if you like this workflow, what other tools and stacks of tools you use, and whether you found the information useful. Thank you.